I'm Any New Province, and this is Net Benefits, the series where we explore the benefits of net decking in Pauper. This week we're playing Boros Monarch, or more specifically the Boros Monarch 75 that Pascal 3000 won the Pauper Challenge with this weekend. Before I get into the deck tech, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know that you're enjoying everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Okay, so Boros Monarch, it's named after this card, Palace Sentinels, which is 3 and a white for a 2/4, and it says, when Palace Sentinels enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. The Monarch is a great ability. When you are the Monarch, it means that you draw an extra card at the beginning of each of your end steps. If you're the Monarch and someone attacks and hits you and they aren't the Monarch, they become the Monarch instead. So you have to be proactive about making sure your opponent's creatures can't get in to deal damage. This deck is incredibly powerful. It's got a really great source of card advantage in all of its can-tripping eggs and the birds that pick up those eggs. It can also win out of nowhere by sending some burn spells at your face after attacking in at you with some spirit tokens. Palace Sentinels does a pretty good job of maintaining the monarchy status on its own. It's a 2/4, which is a pretty big butt. That means you can't just throw any stompy creature at it and expect to be drawing cards on each of your end steps. If your opponent can go wide enough to somehow get around your Palace Sentinels and your other creatures, we have a contingency plan in Prismatic Strands. Prismatic Strands says, prevent all damage that sources of the color of your choice would deal this turn. It has Flashback, which says tap an untapped white creature you control. That means you can cast it out of your graveyard for free by tapping an untapped white creature. This is obviously really great for fogging your opponent's board. It'll keep the Monarch status and it'll keep you alive for a little bit longer to draw a few more interactive spells. It's also good for fogging your opponent's damage-based removal, which is a bit of a fringe case, but it does come up. While we're on the topic of card advantage, I'm going to go over the other spells that helps keep this deck consistent and interactive throughout the entire game. First, we have Thraben Inspector. It's a 1-mana 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you investigate, which means you get a clue that you can pay 2, tap, and sacrifice to draw a card. Next, we have Prophetic Prism. It's a 2-mana artifact that says, when Prophetic Prism enters the battlefield, draw a card. That's the most important part, but it also has the ability to pay 1 and tap, and you can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. That definitely smooths out that little bit of a red splash we have. This next card goes alongside Prismatic Strands and helping you maintain the Monarch status. It's called Alchemist's Vial. It costs 2 mana. It cantrips when it enters the battlefield, which is pretty important, but its ability is 1, tap, sacrifice Alchemist's Vial. Target creature can't attack or block this turn. If your opponent only has 1 evasive threat that might steal the Monarchy from you, you're okay with cashing in your Alchemist Vial to stop it. Next are our threats. They're all flyers, and they're all going to be able to pick in at our opponent while we fog them with Prismatic Strands and draw extra cards at the end of our turn. First, we have Core Skyfisher, which is 1 and a white. It has flying, it's a 2/3, and it says, when Core Skyfisher enters the battlefield, return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. We're going to try to return our eggs or our Thraben Inspectors with this to keep those cards flowing. Our next threat is also good at picking up artifacts so that we can draw cards with them. This is Glinthawk. It costs 1 white, it's a 2/2 flyer, and it says, when Glinthawk enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you return an artifact you control to its owner's hand. Our last threat is Battle Screech, and I think it was very smart for Pascal 3000 to only include 2. Battle Screech costs 2 white. It says create 2 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying. It has Flashback, tap 3 untapped white creatures you control. That means you can cast it out of your graveyard just by tapping creatures. I think you really only need 2 Battle Screeches to win the game unless your opponent is on all Electricaries. There's 2 in there, so you can incidentally draw both in the early game and put that fast clock on, but I just feel like 2 is the right number, and I gotta commend Pascal 3000 for that. Alright, let's have a look at our interaction. First, we have Journey to Nowhere. Journey to Nowhere costs 1 and a white, and it says, when Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield, exile target creature. When Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Playing Journey to Nowhere in a deck with Core Skyfishers means if our opponent bounces their creature to get it out of the way of removal, we can just pick up the Journey to Nowhere and cast it again. Next is a Miser's Electricary in the main board. I think this is a pretty smart inclusion too. Electricary costs 1 red, and it says, Electricary deals 1 damage to target creature you don't control, which seems kind of underwhelming, but it also has Overload 1 and a red, which means you may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. The rest of our interaction is also part of a burn package, which can just explode at our opponent when they're least expecting it. First, we have Galvanic Blast, which costs 1 red, and it says, Galvanic Blast deals 2 damage to target creature or player, which can at least remove a ninja, but it has Metalcraft, which says Galvanic Blast deals 4 damage to that creature or player instead if you control 3 or more artifacts. The last spell in our main deck is Lightning Bolt. It costs 1 red, and it says Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature or player, although I'm sure it needs no introduction. Okay, let's have a look at this mana base. First, we have 3 Ancient Dens. They're artifact lands, and they can tap for white mana. They're going to power up our Galvanic Blasts. We have 1 Bazooka Bog, which enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, we can exile all cards from target player's graveyard. We can pick this up with Core Skyfishers or our next land, Boros Garrison. Boros Garrison enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, we can return a land we control to our hand. When it becomes untapped, it taps for red and white. We have 3 Great Furnaces, more artifact lands, only these ones tap for red. We have 2 Secluded Steps. We can play these early and pick them up with our Garrisons or Skyfishers and use their cycling ability. It costs 1 white, we can pitch it and draw a new card. We have 2 Snow-Covered Mountains, probably for faking out opponents, maybe making them think we're on Scred Delver. We have 2 Snow-Covered Plains, not so much of a fake out, but they look pretty cool. And we also have 4 Windscarred Crags, just your standard pauper duels. They enter tapped, gain you a life, and when they become untapped, they add red or white. Okay, let's look at this sideboard. First, we have Lone Missionary. It costs 1 and a white, it's a 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. If we can recur this a few times, it should get us out of burn range. We have Standard Bearer, which our opponent has to target with any of their pump spells or auras that can target our creatures. It's going to become our own Boggle. We have 2 Core Sanctifiers for targeting any of our opponent's artifacts or enchantments we don't like and want to get off the battlefield. We have 1 Reaping the Graves for those super grindy matchups, so you can get that storm count up to 8 or 9 and then recur all of your flyers out of your graveyard to pick up your artifacts and draw more cards. We have 2 more Electrickeries for killing all those pesky X1s. We have 2 Corilla Shamans for just destroying all of Affinity's lands. We have 4 Pyroblasts to make our matchups against blue decks a little bit better and maybe force our stuff through counterspells, and 1 Relic of Progenitus to nuke those graveyards when we don't care about flashing back Battle Screech. And there it is, Boros Monarch. Congratulations to Pascal 3000 for winning the Pauper Challenge with this 75 this weekend. We're going to take this deck into a league at twitch.tv/AnyNewProvince. We're there every Monday night playing competitive Pauper decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Monday night.